Mūsų karta pirmoji, supratusi, kaip iš lėto kenkiame gamtai. Ir vienintelė, žinanti, kad dar yra laiko ją išsaugoti. Apsaugokime mūsų visų ateitį. Ergo.
The laws of physics, the laws of life. Laws connect everything. We think that to be legal advisors, we must live under the same philosophy, adapting to connect and connecting to adapt.
Nepraleiskite laiko veltui. Nauji kino festivaliuose kritikus ir žiūrovus sužavėję filmai. Elito kinas. Ketvirtadienio vakarais per LRT+.
Kad būtum, reikia kito. Kino Pavasaris. Kovo 24, balandžio 3 dienomis visoje Lietuvoje. Didysis partneris Ergo draudimo grupė. Informaciniai partneriai LRT 15 min žmonės.
Sveiki, mėly Kino Pavasario žiūrovai. Šiandien labai ypatinga diena festivaliui ir visiems Lietuvos žiūrovams, nes ypatingų būdų, virtualių tiltų, šiandien su mumis susijungia ir Vilniaus kino festivalyje viešės, tokia viena turbūt Lietuvos auditorijos laukiamiausių, mylimiausių ir labiausiai vertinamų Prancūzijos kino žvaigždžių, tai režisierė Céline Sciamma. Hello, Céline. Welcome to Vilnius.
Hello. Hi, thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasant background you're in. It's like almost like in the woods. Only the chair, in a way, gives it away that you're somewhere.
My friends are here.
Oh, it would be incredible to have you here. But thank you so much for joining us today. There are a couple of spectators that just went out of the screening here in Vilnius Film Festival. And I'm gonna soon open up the mic for the audience, but I wanted just to start with a couple of questions. And I believe that most of the Q&As you do, they start from the very, very basic question, because we know you from very different films. And then Petit Mama was something of an incredibly pleasant surprise for all of us. A film which is in a way crossing generations and is referring not only to the adults but also for the younger audiences. Please tell a little bit of the background. How did you come up with the ideas for Petit Mama?
Well, it's this idea really came up to me, struck me like in a dream. I was awake, I was bored in a ceremony, and I started thinking about two little girls hanging out in the woods, building a tree house like that. And my interpretation of that image that was quite freely unrolling in my mind was that one was the mother and one was the daughter, and that they were the same age. And suddenly this idea felt like very ancient, felt like it was coming from another time, felt like it had been told, felt like this very ancient mythology, maybe a matriarchal mythology, one we haven't been handed. And felt also very troubling, both peaceful and troubling. It felt like a story that could be very democratic, and that could respect equally a kid and an adult, which is a former kid, in a theater room. And I felt lucky that this story, that this idea crossed my path, because suddenly it felt like, oh, this might be the perfect ride. Even though it feels strange after Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which was such a big film in a way. This felt like the same program, the same kind of ride for new cinema, but that would be more inclusive, that would welcome family, men, children. So it felt like a departure, but it felt also like expanding this experience of cinema that I'm obsessed about and I'm working every minute of my life. So this felt like, something like a special little star in the sky of films, but also like the next step of this adventure of making films and thinking about an audience. That's what I can say.
The movie very interestingly tackles the meeting between the two generations and maybe the tension in the fact that for children and parents to actually meet as the equal persons is in a way like impossible. So you make a picture, you make a film about this, like in a way almost impossible magic meeting between the two. Can you elaborate a little bit on that impossible meeting in a way?
Yes, well, that's the thing. It's that movies can make things that are impossible possible. In a way, Portrait of Lady on Fire also was looking at an impossible love between two women in the 18th century, but it was looking at it in all its potential. It was possible maybe for a few days, but it was possible, and it would have been possible. And I try to treat this relationship between mother and daughter at the same age, exactly the same way, looking at its potential. What if it was possible? What would happen? And it's not only because we are building this fake reality that we're going to look at for an hour and 12 minutes. It's also because fictions. We are always looking also at ourselves in our relationship, trying to understand, trying to heal, trying to grow through fiction. Our psychotherapies, they're built around those ancient mythologies that were renewed by 20th century Freud and about, conflict in the family. Oedipus is all about conflict in the family, rivalry. And we're supposed to understand, that is correct, because we've grown in that culture, but also to heal ourselves through this story of rivalry, this mythology of rivalry. What if, through fiction, so very modest as Oedipus, we would bring another possibility of imagining ourselves, our families, our relationship with the one we love, the one that we lost, the one that are still here and we don't get along with. All this what if, we were using fiction very, very primitively as a possibility of ourselves. That's why the film is created as this very small device, this pocket film, so that you can bring it home. And for me, even though it lasts for 1 hour and 12 minutes, which is very short, it's a 24-hour experience that includes your night. And, I have a friend of mine who told me this very simple thing about the film. Like, she told me, whenever I'm pissed off at my dad, she's a 30-year-old woman, she's telling me, whenever I'm pissed off at my dad or we're in a fight, I just picture myself living in a treehouse with him, and things are better. And that's the ambition of the film, that it would have an impact on all the way you imagine yourself, and especially imagine yourself with the different generation of women in your family, which is something we all carry within ourselves.
And you set your film in the forest, like most of the action takes place in the very remote place, which also, like in a way, transfers us to the fairy tale kind of world, right? Which is, forest has been always a suggestive place for some magic happening, and so on. Can you tell a little bit more about, like, what was behind? Like, you wrote a script, you had an idea, and then how did you come up with all the settings that followed out?
Well, as I told you, that's the first image was this treehouse. Suddenly, the forest was involved. And it felt right because, my childhood was a forest childhood. This is actually shot the film in my hometown. So this is the forest where I used to build very shitty tree houses by myself. But also, as you said, it's a very common mythology of fairy tales, and especially the one involving children lost in the forest, or even Snow White. And you know, that's the chicken and the egg. Why is that? I think, you know, I think forest has been picked, of course, because it's very different when it's day or when it's night, because it's morbid, and it's also very much alive. It's also a moment where really nature expresses all its life and death thing, and so it's very symbolical place, but it's also a very democratic one. I think it's the most democratic nature is the forest, because not everyone knows about the mountains, not everyone knows about the sea or the beach, but forests, I think, are very, very common space. So that's maybe why it became a very common language for our myths and fairy tales. For me, there was also a strong thought about anime and about Miyazaki's work or Mamoru Soda's work. And the film was kind of crafted as an animated film in a way. And I wanted those kind of textures and colors. And also I wanted to be bold enough with my director of photography, Claire Maton, so that we could intervene on nature, which means bring our own colors. We brought like thousands of leaves from other forests, so that to bring this touch of warmth, because there was too much, it was so green at the time we were shooting. So the level of fantasizing, the level of intervention on reality, in nature, was also part of the choice of the forest. Very, very, very modest, very common scenery. And that's a very, very small wood. It's not charismatic at all, but it's places that are that anonymous in a way. You can then, it's easier to actually craft a path, a fictional path. To edit a forest is, in a way, you can have like fictional path, like, and that's also what's at stake in the film. It's like, it's a common space and time, but you still have to design for the audience the fact that if you go there, it's Nelly's house. If you go there, it's Mario's house. And if you go by this tree, then you go back in the past. And, it's and that might be the most difficult part of the job of a director. I don't know why we never quite mention it, but it's actually, to think about space and time, to editing, and to, looking at a tree and saying like, okay, this is the corridor to the past. And it's such a small and bold gesture to pick, a frame.
This year, the main theme of Vilnius Film Festival, Kino Pavasaris, in English sounds "To exist, you coexist." And been trying to find films that are in a way commenting on this theme and commenting the intertwined lives of humans, but also along with the nature, all these entanglement. And I think that your film, particularly this one, is really, really commenting on that, like the way we all our lives are really intertwined, and the past and future and the present is also fused in a way. And this is what is like the most exciting about this film, I think, here, this fusion of the time. I don't know if you would like to elaborate a little bit on the time theme in your film.
Well, yeah, this one was really particular to write, because it was officially a time-traveling film in a way. And I didn't want to write a time traveling film because I also believe like all films are written as time traveling, in a way. It's like editing is time traveling. And so the fact that the film was so candid about that, the fact that the film was like, oh, cinema is time traveling, was actually quite a hard decision to take, because suddenly when you have such a high concept that you could really explore as much as Back to the Future does, or Big, like Penny Marshall, or any film that involves time traveling, the fact that you would give up on having your personal time traveling machine, your DeLorean, it's very counterintuitive, very, very, because suddenly the story about time is really, really fun to write. There's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of suspense, and giving all these tools, even though you love them, giving them up to reflect and think about a common time and space rather than a one you have to conquer or to leave. And a film about presence, which is the body of two people sharing a frame or not sharing a frame, especially in the time we are living, where the questions of two bodies being close has been totally fully renewed in every cell of our bodies. This feels different. We've been rebooted. we live the global shift about presence for 2 years now, and it has been evolving. First there was like absence, then there was like threatening presence, then there was the one people you have intimacy with and that you choose, people you have intimacy that you don't choose, all this kind of new feeling you have. Well, this is presence. This is what presence is. We've been reflecting and feeling that a lot for the past 2 years, and that's also why I wanted to make the film within this era, about absence and presence and warmth and what it's like to breathe the same air. And it felt really felt it really strong when shooting, because we were shooting through second lockdown in France, which means autumn of 2020. And even the kids were wearing masks at the time in France, and so it meant that they were just taking off their masks just when we were about to shoot. The privilege of seeing faces and the privilege of this all felt like this all really felt like an intense moment. Yeah.
No, indeed, and I think that in your previous films, but also here, another like very present topic is the presence of like two persons together, and actually this question is, what does the second person brings in my life, and what changes it brings, and how my life changes afterwards, and I don't know if you want to expand on that, but it was just like something that was, I think, in the post-pandemic year, it's incredibly important maybe to talk again about the importance of the other next to us.
Yes, and to feel it. I think we feel it very, very more vividly now, and it's there's an opportunity in experimenting that much sensitivity. And I'm afraid it's the opposite that is happening right now. But it goes with it. I mean, it's our skin has expanded, I think. Let's hope our hearts too, Let's hope it follows, yes.
I would like to encourage the audience to ask questions, or like if you have something to share, just raise your hand. Right?
Hello, Céline. It's really nice to have you here, and we really hope one day that you will come to Vilnius. I was wondering about the young actresses, Josephine and Gabrielle. How did you discover them, and what was it like working with them? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. Well, the thing is, I'm working with the same casting directors for the 5 film. So it's now a relationship where there's a lot of confidence. And I you know, when my DP comes with an idea, I'm not like, yeah, you should show me 10 different ideas, you know? And I'm kind of doing the same with casting. It's a process that is always described as quite romantic, or like you've been looking for people, you know, especially with kids. You're like, oh, I saw like 100 kids. I only saw them. And I'm not making a lesson here. I'm not saying like you shouldn't fill your rooms with a lot of kids. It's amazing to do casting with kids. It's great opportunities for everybody. You know, it's not about that, but it's just that I'm lucky enough now that the kids that come to my casting, they've seen my films since I've been, you know, Tomboy was secretly for them also. And My Life as a Courgette or as a Zucchini was for kids. So suddenly, Josephine and Gabrielle, when they come to the casting, they're not coming just to do a film. They're coming to do a film made by this woman, and they saw that she did these 2 things. So, and, you know, kids, they know about cinema. So, you know, they know we're not doing, I'm not going to give any examples because I don't have any, but they know we're doing this kind of films. So I just met Dom, my casting director, met like 10 kids, 12 kids. And I met Dom and met Dom as a duo because we were looking, there was an idea within casting, and I can only recommend that also, to have an idea what you're looking for that is. And I wanted them to be sisters. So that was mentioned in the ad. Sisters born on the same day as they consider themselves were also very much welcome. And that was because it was kind of my personal question within the film. Like I said, I felt it was like coming from a very ancient mythology, and I tried to answer it my way. And my personal question was like, if I met my mother as a kid, would she be my sister? Would we share the same mother? And the film is really embodying this idea. That's how I feel about it. That's also why when people are telling me, oh, it's a film about a mother-daughter relationship, I'm like, well, not really. For me, it's really about a trio. And kids, for instance, we see the film, they're very, very much into the grandmother, obviously. So, yeah, I wanted to work with sisters because that was the secret question, and I didn't want to have any secrets. And I also wanted to work with one family so that they wouldn't have to have the pressure of meeting someone else. They would have to have this incredible pressure of having to meet someone you know that well on screen, which is another form of risk. But it's really about, I'm really trying more and more to create, even within the scripts and films, as a safe space for workers. That includes myself and all the cast and all the crew. And especially when you're working with kids, especially it should be even safer. So there's an ethics of casting and an ethics of writing, and that I try to take very, very far when it's involved kids. So that, for instance, they didn't have to perform any negative emotions, for instance. Didn't have to perform any conflict. So yeah, that's how we worked, to answer your question. Actually, it's that the film is full of ideas. I met them, I just saw the 2 of them walking. You see how they walk. Which is like, this is perfect. We read the script. I looked at them with the camera, but don't really try to give them the lines or whatever, because, you know, these kids, they're going to be eventually good at performing. Obviously, it feels so weird to ask an adult to play, but to the kids it feels really, really simple. So then, we really worked around the ideas of the film and this scene by scene. And for me, it's really the same job as working with Adèle Haenel and Noémie Merlan, or working with Joséphine and Gabriel Sans. It's really like sharing the brain of the film and finding the cinematic solution together for each scene. And being the fully open to receive what they're going to give. You know, it's also very, very, we talk a lot about rhythm, we talk a lot about staging, tracking shot. It's always about that. It's always about where the camera is, what you're going to do in what rhythm. And the beauty of working with kids is that it's for the first few days, you watch them discover cinema as a job. So it's you have to be very, very sure of yourself, because there's a lot to be learned. And then at some point, after a few days, you see them learning, expanding the language of the film. And that happened in a very, very clear moment for me that I'm still not recovering from, because it's always a mystery. First days, it's really about, especially also the house was designed, so like I designed a corridor so that it would take 12 steps with a very slow tracking shot to go from one side to another. So the whole thing was designed to groove in the language of the film. But, you know, to tell a kid to walk at this pace or this pace, especially they were very, very energetic. They kept running. They don't walk, they run. So the two of them. So suddenly to find a place was something very counterintuitive for them. And after like 10 days, there's a scene in the film where she wakes up. She's in the bed of the grandmother. She wakes up, she goes to her room, her father is sleeping, and she puts the blanket. So it's a long take, and waking up, super hard. And I didn't say anything about the pace. She just woke up in the rhythm of the film. And I don't think I never had to mention some kind of groove anymore since that moment. She just, and that's how you work with actors. That's how I work with actors in general, which is, being very, very accurate about rhythm, so that at some point we're all, speaking and expanding the same language.
I wonder, did they see the film and what was their reactions? Did they like the film? The two sisters? And if you could, from here, could speak a little bit about your intentions towards the audience. Was it like directed to younger ones, or were you thinking about the audience at all?
Yes, I'm always thinking about the audience, and I think that's how I work. Thinking what do I want people to experience. And there's always, there's always like some form of thought for the room. And my thought on this one was that, a room full of adults and kids. And, it was the Oscars yesterday. And when the animated award happened, the joke was animation, something kids enjoy and adults have to endure. And the fact that, you could craft a film that would, equally respect both, and offer, really for me, the perfect audience was like a parent, an adult and a kid sitting next to each other. So it's even designed so that they know within the film that they should trust both. They both should trust the film, because, you don't know. And it's designed in one scene. It's when she puts her kid to bed, the mother, she hasn't left, so it's like the first 15 minutes of the film. She's putting the kid to bed, and then the kid asks her a question and goes, I don't remember what she says, but, and the mother says, well, you're always asking questions when it's time to go to bed. And then the kid, and so that moment, all the adults, they connect, in the room, they're like, yes. But then the kid says, yes, but that's when I see you. And suddenly, that scene is designed about a quarter of an hour after the film, so that everyone feels like, and the kids and the adults are like, okay, suddenly there's a horizontality in the room. And my whole obsession when I was writing the film could be summed up in a very simple image. I was thinking, okay, mother and a daughter, they sit to the film, then they get out of the theater, and they have to catch the bus, and the bus is coming. And so they run, and they all end, and they run together. They run differently. Very modest.
That's so true what you're saying. Maybe there are more questions. Yes, please.
Hello. So, exploring the experience of children has been a major part of your work as a screenwriter and as a director. But in the last few features, your protagonists have become a bit older in age. And I was wondering, what inspired you to once again make a film centering children? Was there a specific reason, or did you just felt right to go back to that again?
Well, I used to think that I was working with children and writing about childhood because I had the opportunity to do cinema at a very young age myself, and that I was kind of reflecting on things that were close to me. But now I'm 43 years old, and I still feel close to this thing. And I've changed how I think about that in a way. I feel now that kids are just great characters for the cinema that I want to make, which is a cinema where it's like vital to look, vital to gaze. And kids, their survival depends on their gaze. Where am I? What's the context? What is people who I depend on? So it's not about kids having this candid look on things or this poetic look on things. They do have a lot of. It's just you're poetic and you're candid and you have great ideas when you keep looking at things. I think when you're very, very. So the fact that there's so much that they're observing and that they don't have power, I think makes them great characters for the films I have in my head. And also I feel like it's really important politically. I mean, it's also part of the joy of being a filmmaker that has done 5 films is, like, for instance, Tomboy was 2011. And now people are coming at me, they're 20 years old, and they saw the film when they were 9. And it makes them cinephile, you know. There's a lot of it. Films can have several impacts, but it's also they're always an education to cinema, right? And the fact that to see the fact that, and I remember the impact that films had when I was a kid, and when Hartos films, the impact that they had on me. So I'm thinking about kids because I think we should all be obsessed with this, and everyone's pretending to be. You know, it's always like, it's education. Each time, like, we want to solve a problem in the world, like, I don't know, sexual violence, it's always like education. Well, we see how kids have been treated during this pandemic. I don't know about how things were on your side, but on ours it's been pretty clear. And that's also what made me rush into wanting to do this film. I really wanted to, because this idea I had in mind for a very long time. But when the pandemic hit us all, it felt like I had to do it really, really fast, because suddenly it was about kids and ancient people being separated, isolated. It was about emptying houses of people you couldn't say goodbye to. And it was about, loss and death in kids' life. And it felt it should be addressed, and that, cinemas were closed. And I felt like, okay, when they're going to reopen, we will have a lot of images that had been waiting to go on those screens, and they're images from before. And we're going to need those images, those candid images, but also they're going to be very violent in a way. So we need those, but we also need images that have been made and taken in, during this moment, aware of what was happening. And that I didn't have just kids in mind thinking about that, but I had this story, and it felt intemporal. And then when this happened, it felt like, oh, this is a story for now.
Any more questions in the yes?
Hello. I was kind of really thinking whether to ask this question or not, because I kind of wanted to leave it unresolved. But then at the same time, I'm very curious. Was it all the characters that kind of understood the time traveling thing in the film, or was it just the young girl? Because I was thinking that, for example, maybe if the mother wouldn't have left, then she wouldn't have run away to look for the house and meet her young, and etc. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that. And also the father as well, kind of meeting his wife when she was a young child. Did he understand that or not? Thank you.
Well, I think they both understand. They're both living the same thing, the two kids. They are both living, addressing each other like in all their opportunities, which means like two new friends, a mother and a daughter, that will never see each other again, but that will also spend the rest of their life together. And I think they're all, the two of them are really, really harvesting this situation. They're even performing to be lovers when they're playing, you know, that they would have a kid, that they would. So they're playing with this situation the most. And that's also why they're not worried about the time traveling machine. The thing that will stop them is the fact that she has to go to the hospital, you know? And that Nelly has to go back to, that this house is going to be sold. So it's not about how do we go back, it's how do we make the most of the time we have, which is, you know, I really try to make the film the same, whereas as it happened or not, it doesn't matter. Because the impact is the same on the character. Whereas Nelly has dreamt all that, because, you know, when she enters that house, she's sleeping. And you never see her sleeping through the film. She's always in a bed with her eyes open. So my editor told me it's a film about a kid who's insomniac, but it also could be a film about a kid who's sleeping through the whole thing. But the thing is, it doesn't change anything, because in the end, she calls her mother by her name. In the end, she sees her differently, even though, and you know, and that's exactly the purpose of the film. That's why it's not resolved, because the film is the same. The film puts you in a position when, you know, there's room for you. It's really designed like that, so that there's not too much detail about this family, the background. There's room for your story. So you then, it activates this idea in your head. And so the impact of that fiction, of that daydream of yours that is going to the cinema, for me, it's huge. For me, I mean, for instance, when I thought about that, for months, for weeks writing this thing, when I thought about hanging out with that's not my mother, but it's, you know, of course you think about it. I thought about that also. I felt really good. I felt like really, really good. And the fact that there's not a single fight, for instance, when some people would read the script before it was being made, it was like, they were like, but there should be a fight scene between them. And I was like, no, I don't want to. I want this to be, I want the impact of this to be much more, to be free from all that. Sorry, this is a very long, I don't even know if I answered your question. But so yeah, in my mind, it's very clear that they believe each other. And you know, that scene which from at some point, I was like, when I realized it was a time traveling film, in the process of writing it, I was like, oh my God, then how is she going to believe her? She's going to have to prove that she's a kid. And I was like, oh, this is going to take so much time. I'm not interested in this. And then I said, okay, no, she's just going to believe her. You know what? She's just going to believe her. She's going to say that I'm your child. I come from the future. I know she's not even saying that. She said, I'm your child. And then she's going to say, I believe you. And, you know, this was also political. It felt really good, for instance, because, you know, I think when you're writing, I don't know if there's young people in the audience or people just wanting to write, but writing should feel good. It should feel good. Having an idea should feel good. And this felt really good. And I was like, oh, okay, it's also 2021. And I want people to believe each other on screen. I think we need that. I think I want someone to say, like, this happened to me, and one goes like, I believe you. So it's that's also how you make some kind of narrative choice. It's the intersection of different ideas and feelings, and usually when it works. So that's why, you know, you shouldn't be afraid of having political ideas in your guts and in your films, because it's not, you're not putting them in there. They're helping you take a decision. And for instance, for me, taking the decision of avoiding this whole time traveling plot is, in a way, it's not a political idea, but I can be, I don't know if it's, I'm going to say brave enough to take it, because it could be really shitty, you know, it could be really, really not interesting. So I'm going to take that move, because I'm helped by these ideas that I want to see on screen. So it gives you some kind of energy, it gives you some kind of help.
Céline, thank you so much for your beautiful explanations and thoughts. And you are really, really like weighted here. You're gonna be really welcomed when you're gonna make a new film, because indeed all your films have an incredible success among Lithuanian audiences, and it will be like the biggest pleasure of all of us to have you present with your hopefully next film when it's gonna come up. Would you like to say a few words about what we're about to wait?
Well, no, because I don't know yet, but I make films also to meet people. So I'm really glad that we get to meet like that, even though it's frustrating. And this has a future. So I'll be glad to come and meet this amazing audience. Thank you for all your great questions, and it was really nice talking to you.
We will be waiting for you next time. Thank you so much for your time. That's fun.
Kad būtum, reikia kito. Kino Pavasaris. Kovo 24, balandžio 3 dienomis visoje Lietuvoje. Didysis partneris Ergo draudimo grupė. Informaciniai partneriai LRT 15 min žmonės.